Hello, class. Um, what I'd like to do is review how our student learning outcomes relate to the extended definition essay. Specifically, right, how you can go beyond, right, the traditional definition of the term, right? Uh, what makes the term abstract, right? And you want to describe and explain the multiple perspectives, right? As you look here in global awareness. So those of you that are writing on identity, we all understand there's certain aspects of identity that we can't change. But when one improves one's social standing, when one changes one's identity through various ways, is that change done logically, using Occam's razor, using dialectical thinking, right? Using Rogerian strategy, using logos, or is one instead focusing on illogical emotional appeals, illogical hidden assumptions, hubris, right? Is that fueling that overconfidence, that arrogance, fueling one's behavior to make illogical decisions, right? In which case, we could see how one's identity change could be a negative, right? Could not be a positive thing. You look at Macbeth, he improves his identity, he becomes king. You look at Hamlet, right? He finds out that Claudius is guilty, but what does he do with that information? How does Macbeth improve his identity? Well, they all commit violent acts. When you think of maturity, right? We all think of the dictionary definition of maturity has to do with time, has to do with age. Something is technically mature at a certain time, at a certain age. But doesn't it also have to do with critical thinking? And couldn't we look at maturity from a psychological perspective as having to do more with using logic to further one's goals rather than pandering to emotions, hidden assumptions, illogical appeals, hubris? Okay, so again, this is a very important assignment in which you're going to look at the multiple perspectives. And when you look up the word abstract, it means difficult to understand. So what's difficult to understand about identity? What's difficult to understand about maturity? Depression, addiction. Again, a lot of these have to come down to psychological, right, aspects, otherwise known as, right, the thought process, critical thinking. So I encourage everybody to consider criticalthinking.org as a possible source, as I mentioned on previous videos, to consider philosophical thinking as a possible source from page 60, as I mentioned on previous videos. And make sure that when you're analyzing your fiction, your character analyses, to prove your abstract extended definition, you're going beyond, make sure that in addition to identifying and evaluating the elements of fiction, the elements of your secondary sources, when you're analyzing those sources and evaluating those sources, make sure you're also including synthesis based on the evidence from your fictional analysis to expand your definition of the abstract term. And synthesis, quite literally, as opposed to analysis, right? Combining of the elements. So synthesize your analysis of the fiction with your evaluation of the sources to present your extended definition of the abstract term. And while doing so, you will be fulfilling your course learning outcomes. So ideally, when we talk about the human experience, right, these different multiple perspectives, right, related to different cultural perspectives on classic and contemporary issues. I think that's a wonderful way of explaining what do we learn about the human experience. Because remember, as reading and writing about literature tells us, when we read literature, we learn about life. When we write about literature, we learn about life and ourselves. So what do we learn about the human experience, and how can you share those ideas with your readers to better right? Uh, Synthesize your claims with your analysis and your evaluation. I hope this video was helpful. As always, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching and listening, and write with confidence.